Starting your day off with a take on Vegas you won't get anywhere else.
Hi, I'm Holly Madison, and I listen to Brian Shapiro.
Hi, this is William Shatner, and I listen to Brian Shapiro.
Hey, this is Larry the Cable Guy, and I listen to Brian Shapiro. Why? Because I'm a good American. So is he. And if you don't listen to him, you need to pack up and leave this country.
This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Come on, guys!
What's up, Vegas? It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us. It is Tuesday. And oh boy, do we have a lot to get to. A lot to get into on this show. And I also want to start off by saying we're moving 9 a.m. to noon starting August 12th. Expanding the show an hour, so we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Big story and a couple big stories today, and certainly a sad one in the boxing world. A fighter by the name of Maxim Dadashev, 28 years old. He fought on Friday night. He's lost his life. Terrible story, tragedy in the boxing world. And we just had, the horrible story of Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker, who lost his life different outside the ring. So a sad couple weeks for boxing. Two Hall of Famers are going to be joining us here. Al Bernstein coming up in hour number 2, Hall of Fame broadcaster, knows the sport inside and out. And a Hall of Fame referee, Joe Cortez, former fighter in his own right, too. Joe Cortez will be joining us in studio. What could have been done, if anything, to prevent something like this from happening? This is just another example of how precious life is and how dangerous the sport of boxing is. So we'll get to that in hour number 2. I want to start off with this, JD, because I think this is a big story. And believe it or not, I'm going to attack CNN today. I know that might be hard for people to believe. But this story, two opposite ends of the spectrum. I feel like there's no such thing as freedom of speech anymore. Like, you can't really say what's on your mind. So long as it's not racist and completely over-the-top dumb, you should be allowed, in my opinion, to speak your mind. Dan Le Batard did it on ESPN. I want to start with this. Miss Michigan Kathy Zhu. Okay, she had just won the Miss Michigan pageant. And recently, over the course of the last several days, she was stripped of her title after what some people are saying were insensitive and racist tweets. I will get to that. She's 20 years old, and she received an email from the pageant removing her from her position. Now, some people are calling these tweets racist that she did. And keep in mind, this was 2 years ago. Now, it doesn't matter if you tweeted something 2 years ago or 2 days ago. If you say something which is racist, and I'm not saying this was racist, you have to be held accountable for that. So, according to screenshots that were obtained in this woman's first tweet, she's 20 years old now. In her first tweet, she said, "Did you know that the majority of black deaths are caused by other blacks? Fix problems within your own community first before blaming others." Now, let me give a little context to this tweet. Somebody that she was talking to was saying, somewhere along the lines of police are killing black people. Now, if you look at the stats, to suggest that police officers are just going out and killing innocent black people, it's just not happening. Now, is there racism out there? Absolutely. Are there racist cops out there? Absolutely. Are there a ton of injustices out there? Absolutely. And maybe she should have put that in there. But I don't necessarily disagree with what she said, right? When Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson speak, they're always talking about, a white officer killing a black person or a white person killing. But when it's black on black crime, do we hear Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson talking about that or what's going on in Chicago? No. So I think I understand, JD, what she was trying to say. Maybe she didn't say it as eloquently maybe as she should have.
What was she, 18 years old at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to fault her for that. I don't think she was being racist. Do you? I don't think it's racist.
Actually, I think she was being factual.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
And that's definitely her. And she can have that opinion, and that's perfectly fine to have that opinion. And the reason that the Reverend Jesse Jackson doesn't discuss these type of things is because it doesn't fit his narrative. But you're right. I mean, and that's and not only does racism exist in the United States, Caucasian to African American, but it's every single color. Racism is racism regardless of color. Just because you're the minority doesn't mean the majority isn't being discriminated against.
And I agree. And so this woman, Kathy Zhu, goes on CNN, and she's speaking to an anchor there by the name of Allison Camerota. Never been a big fan of hers. And this is what Allison Camerota brings up. She's asking her about this tweet about black on black crime. And I want to play this clip because I think it is so ridiculous. And this is why sometimes people are out to get the media Allison Camerota is talking to Kathy Zhu, trying to make her sound like a racist. And this is the question she asked her.
Do you know who causes the majority of white deaths?
Yeah, this is, apparently this is white people cause white deaths. It's not even that's the issue. The issue is that people didn't know that I was responding to another person calling cops bad people.
Why would you focus on blacks causing black deaths when the majority of white deaths are caused by white people? Why? This is why people think that has a ring of racism to it. You didn't mention the white statistic.
Okay, first of all, that is completely ridiculous. This has nothing to do with white statistics.
She sounds a lot like you when we have the political conversations, though.
No, I would never. What are you talking about? I would never say something like that.
When someone defends somebody else and they don't, or when someone defends Donald Trump or when it's one of the other directions, you think I would ask her that question? Not with race.
That's utterly ridiculous.
But the same school of thought takes place on a consistent basis with politics.
I'm sorry, I disagree with you. Okay, this is completely over the line. I don't think I go over the line when I'm debating people on politics. This woman, Allison Camerota, is talking about white on white crime that has absolutely nothing to do with this conversation. The tweet that Zhu put out was about black on black crime. Why on earth would she tweet something out about white on white crime? That makes absolutely no sense. And this is a joke. And this is an example of somebody in the media that is trying to pin somebody out, well, to kind of fit their narrative. And it was ridiculous. And I am absolutely positively defending Zhu when it comes to this. And I thought she actually handled herself quite well in this interview. And I think stripping her crown of Miss Michigan is a joke. It is one thing if you say something racist. For example, if she said the N-word on Twitter, which she didn't, or if she did something even close to that, I would support stripping her of her crown. She didn't even come close to that. Let me read one other tweet, and people are calling this racist, okay? Zhu said, there is a try a hijab on booth at my college campus. So you're telling me that it's now just a fashion accessory and not a religious thing? Or are you just trying to get women used to being oppressed under Islam? First of all, she's right. Many women under Islam are oppressed. That's not racist. It's just a fact, number one. And number two, I don't like it when people try to push their religion on me. I wouldn't like that. If somebody came up to me and said, hey, put on a hijab, I would say, no, get lost. If you want to put on a hijab, go ahead. I don't want to put on a hijab. So, yeah, that would frustrate me a little bit. Now, again, it's not the way I would have handled it. I probably wouldn't have tweeted that out, just like I probably wouldn't have tweeted out black on black crime and so on and so forth. But, again, I don't think she did anything racist.
And she was 18 years old. When I was 18 years old, that's 15 years ago, I was not the smartest of human beings.
Well, at 18 years old, I think you know right from wrong to be a racist or not. But,
sure, there was no slur used, just like there was no slur used in the center back chant.
But to me, her age is academic to this because I don't necessarily think she did anything wrong. I really don't. She was having a debate with someone that said something stupid, that's a fool, that thinks that police are just going out there and killing black people. That's not happening. Not to say that every officer involved shooting is justified, but the majority of them, 99.9% of them, are justified. So Kathy Zhu has lost her crown as Miss Michigan. And I disagree with that. I don't think she really did anything wrong. Maybe she didn't say things as eloquently as she could have, but she is right. Black on black crime, that is a huge issue in this country. And this has nothing to do with white on white crime. And again, I don't know why that moron, that CNN anchor, Allison Camerota, tried to pin her down on that, because that has nothing to do with this conversation.
And who is typically responsible for the black on black crime? It's gangs. It's drug related.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't a lot of injustices out there. And yes,
of course there are.
There are police officers that act differently towards minorities.
The United States is not perfect.
No, that doesn't mean we can't make improvements in our justice system. And I do understand. Look, I've seen African Americans get pulled over for no reason. I've been in the car with some of my friends that have been pulled over for no reason because of the color of their skin, clearly. That crap needs to stop. The injustices, and when we do have a situation where a police officer acts wrongfully, they need to be prosecuted. And that is the frustration I have, because in these instances where things are happening, these cops need to go to jail. Now, when I say these cops, the majority of police officers, I believe, are good people that are heroes and do their job honorably. But in those cases where they do not, They need to be prosecuted. And I also think that body cameras need to be put on 24/7. So that's another subject we could talk about for hours on end. But in regards to Zhu, I thought this was wrong. And I am going to make the case on the other side, not just on the right, because Zhu is clearly a Donald Trump supporter, and that's fine. I don't have anything against her for that, even though I am not a Donald Trump supporter, as you all may know. But I am defending her. I think this was wrong, and we are going to get her on the show to talk about this eventually. I promise you that. Now let's go to the other side. Let's go to the left. Dan Le Batard, who I respect very much, okay, he called out Donald Trump for racism, basically. He went on his show last week, and he talked about the chant, and he also called out the executives as ESPN, called them cowards. I tell you what, he's got balls, Dan Le Batard, and I respect him a lot for speaking his mind. However, with that being said, now for calling, this corporate policy cowardly, now Le Batard is in a big jam because he didn't do his show yesterday. And now ESPN is kind of figuring out, okay, what do we do with this guy? Are we going to suspend him? Are we going to fire him? I tell you what, I would blast them for that too. Dan Le Batard was speaking his mind. And he is absolutely right. It is cowardly, even though a lot of people maybe say they don't want to talk about, they don't want to hear politics on ESPN, right? They don't want to talk, you don't want to hear about it, don't talk about it. There are certain situations where I think you have to. And that was one of them. And Dan Le Batard is 100% right. Kathy Zhu did absolutely nothing wrong. If she wants to support the president, she could support the president. If she thinks more African Americans should be talking about black-on-black crime, then she can go ahead and do that. If she gets frustrated when somebody is on her campus asking her to put on these hijabs, and that frustrates her, and she wants to tweet, and I don't think what she said, by the way, was racist in any way stretch. I mean, there are a lot of women in the Islam religion in other countries.
Well, I mean, look it up. Look that statistic up, and you'll see that it's basically true.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for the last 50 or 60 years.
Yeah, I agree.
This isn't a new thing by any stretch.
I agree. Now, maybe some of you disagree with us. I think we agree, me and JD, on this one. This was wrong on both sides. Dan Le Batard and Zhu. But let me give out the number real quickly, JD. 257-5396 is the number to call if you want to be a part of the program. 702-257-5396.
And Le Batard, I have to say, he has balls. His contract is 5 years for $60 million.
He's making a lot of money.
He's getting paid $12 million a year, and he's in 200 more. His show it's okay. It's funny. It's different. But he doesn't have a brokered show like we do.
Right.
He doesn't own his own content. He is working for somebody else. And he is risking. I mean, he's risking a lot with this. And you mentioned the media kind of perpetuating all this. The media is one of the biggest problems in the United States, and they have the worst agenda because their motive is just one thing. It is green. Mm-hmm. It is to appease whatever sponsors and whoever is paying them the most on their side to push whatever they have to be pushed. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really bad thing, and I agree. This was handled very, very poorly.
No, and I think people should, Democrats, people on the left should support Zhu and show some intellectual honesty here. I think the way CNN interviewed her was disgusting, and same thing with Dan Le Batard. I feel the same way about Dan Le Batard. I have a lot of respect for him. He should be allowed to speak his mind, whether that's going after Barack Obama or Donald Trump, whatever the case may be. If people don't like his show, they're not going to listen. Dan Le Batard has a very successful show.
It's probably a top 2 or 3 sports show next to Skip Bayless and Colin Cowherd, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's possible that their contract specifically stipulates that politics can't be talked about. That's very possible.
And you can make the argument.
And he could have breached that.
You could make the argument that, listen, if you don't want to work at ESPN and you want to talk about politics, then go somewhere else.
Right.
So you could make that argument. That is a fair argument, but all I'm trying to say is I do respect Dan Le Batard for speaking what I think was the truth. Let's take some phone calls. We've got some Jan phone lines at 257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of the program, 257-5396. Let's lead off with Brian. Brian, what's going on?
What's up, Brian?
Well, guys, this is exactly what I've been trying to say for the last 10 days, is once you let that racist genie out of the bottle, it doesn't go back in very easily. Once you start slinging around accusations that are unfounded on speculation and innuendo and half-truths.
Are you referring to the chant?
You can't stop it. You can't.
But hold on. But Brian,
you can't take it back.
He's talking about the last 10 days of news and politics in general.
Okay. Well,
both
Brian,
chants, all the tweets, et cetera,
well, Brian,
et cetera.
I'm not calling everything racist.
Now, here's a question, Brian.
Hold on a second. Wait, 1 second, JD. I'm not calling everything racist. Okay.
I didn't say you were. this young lady didn't say anything racist whatsoever.
Right. I really think,
she's been
Brian, I think she is
something.
a victim of circumstance. I think that if this was 3 months ago and all this hadn't happened in the last week, she wouldn't be stripped of anything.
I don't know if I agree with that.
And so what you're saying is the momentum is kind of pushing towards these things happening. And it could be the start of many things like this taking place.
Listen,
is that what you're trying to say, Brian?
Exactly.
Okay, but Brian,
Plus,
but Brian,
okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I'm not going to change my opinions. If I think there's a chant that's racist, I'm going to call it racist. If somebody says go back to your country, whether that's the president or somebody else, I'm going to call it as racist. I see things differently in this situation. I don't think Zhu said anything particularly racist. I don't think she was extremely eloquent with the way she put it, but she was also 18 years old. I don't think she's racist.
And this was 2 years ago. And I respect you. I know what your opinion is, and I totally disagree with the chants. You know, they may have been rude, crude, outlandish, bombastic, provocative, call it what you want, but not one of those people were racist.
You don't know that. You have absolutely no idea.
I agree. You can't say that. You can't say that they were or they weren't.
You have no idea.
That's precisely, JD. That's what I'm trying to say.
You can assume that some were, and I'm sure a lot were, but a lot could be like, hey, we don't want her in office for a number of reasons because, again, she isn't exactly the most liked of congresswomen.
Mm-hmm. Brian, I appreciate the call. Thank you. 257-5396. Let's go to Mike. Mike, what's going on?
Hey, Mike.
Good evening, Mr. Shapiro and Mr. Sharp. How are you guys doing?
Doing
okay.
good, sir. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thank you, Johnny, for putting me on. I think, Brian, everybody's missing the big picture here. I think the invisible gorilla in the room is Facebook and Twitter persecution. You know, it's going to hit everybody eventually where they'll go back in history, violate your First Amendment rights, use that against me, violate your privacy, eventually until they make it to a point where you have to join Facebook, you have to join Twitter so they can keep track of you. This is nothing but massive takeover of our First Amendment rights.
Here's the problem, Mike.
So do you think that the government owns Facebook now?
They always have.
Okay.
Mike, here's the issue, okay? And I don't disagree with you with what you're saying, but here's the problem. If you work for a company and you represent that company and you go on Twitter and you do say something that maybe could hurt the brand or hurt the company, you say something that could be construed as racist, you say something, say maybe about your boss, maybe about one of your coworkers, don't you think your employer does have the right to make a decision on whether you should keep your job or not? Or, you know, I mean, I think that's fair, right?
Well, if it's fair or not, in California, you can be fired for anything at any time, and you cannot sue. Period. That's California.
Well, I don't agree with that. Mike, I don't agree with that. And we're on the same page there.
I know. I don't see the racism here because she's just stating the facts. But anymore, I've been banned 8 times on Facebook and Twitter just for sharing things and saying the facts. You can't get away with nothing anymore. They're going to come for all of us.
Well, I hope not, Mike. I hope you're wrong. That's a scary thought, but I agree with you when it comes to this specific issue. 257-5396. Let's go to Eduardo. Eduardo, what's on your mind?
Yes, well, Don Imus got a big payout because his contract said he could be controversial. There was this
but there's nothing
female talk host, I think, on Air America.
Right. Eduardo, can I ask you something? Eduardo, can I ask you something about Don Imus? I'm glad you bring that up because I think it's one thing to say something that is controversial. It is another thing when you're talking about a female basketball team, many of them African Americans, and you call them nappy-headed hoes. It was disgusting. And I thought he deserved to lose his job for that because I thought that was absolutely a racist comment. Maybe it's because I'm a Howard Stern fan, right? And I grew up with Howard, and I never liked Don Imus. But I was so happy to see him get fired because I thought that was a scumbag thing to say. Eduardo, I think there's a line that you should never cross, and I felt like Don Imus crossed it. What do you think?
Well, I think his contract said they wanted him to say edgy things, and the only way Stern got away with saying similar things, and he said things about handicapped people, and he said something about that Mexican singer that used to wear the sequin bra, whatever her name was.
I don't know what comment you're referring to. I guess we could go back and forth.
Yeah, he said there was a comment.
I believe you, Eduardo.
Or whatever.
I hear you, Eduardo, and
he said something. And
I hear
he
you.
had to take it back in Spanish.
I understand, Eduardo, but on this.
I was going to say about this Randy Rhodes. She did a comedy bit at a comedy club criticizing Hillary Clinton, and she lost her job. So then she got a payout. It depends on what the contract is. I mean, if they don't want racist comments, I mean, I don't know how you necessarily define that.
Well, I think it's I understand Eduardo, and I appreciate your comments, but I think when you call African American women on the basketball court nappy-headed hoes, I think that is completely disgusting and over the line.
Well, it's ridiculous, and it is 1,000% racist.
Yes, that's. I mean, I don't know how you could argue that.
No, you can't.
Yeah, 257-5396. Let's go to Jimmy. Jimmy, what's going on?
What's up, Jimmy?
Hey guys, what's up?
What's up, Jimmy? What's on your mind?
I was wondering how come you won't let the bleeping guy talk anymore? I found him kind of interesting.
You mean the guy that calls in and doesn't have anything to add to the show? You might be.
I think he adds a lot.
I do too. I actually agree. I think he's decent.
All right, I'll give him 30 seconds today, Jimmy, just for you. What do you think about that?
Hopefully, he calls in as he calls in as a different name every day.
No, it's not me. I'm not the bleeping guy.
I understand.
I like what the bleeping
All
guy.
right,
Jimmy, if
enough
you were,
of that.
I wouldn't be mad about it.
Jimmy, what do you think about this issue?
I really haven't thought about it. I think you're crazy though for calling those other people saying, "Go back to your home country."
Hold on.
That's a racist
I'm
comment.
crazy. Okay, hold on. Let me just get this right, Jimmy. Hold on. You're still on the line. Relax. I'll give you a chance to respond. You just called me crazy for telling someone of an. Hold on. Let me finish. Let me finish.
You're a minimum
okay,
wage worker.
are you going to let me talk, or are you just going to? Are you going to let me talk, or are you just going to talk over me? Huh?
You're an idiot.
Okay, you're an idiot. Goodbye. I was going to give you a fair shake, and
Jimmy
you're a
started
moron.
that conversation nice and calm.
No, he's an idiot.
Nice and calm, and then he just kind of lost his mind.
He calls me crazy, and then I try to respond, and I'm respectful, and he continues to talk over me like a moron.
And then he tried to insult your income.
Jimmy, you're crazy. Okay, you called up. You called up a radio show, and that's what you come up with? 257-5396. Let's go to Mark. Mark, what's going on?
Hey, Mark.
Hi, good evening. Earlier you made a comment about people shoving their religion in your face for wearing the hijabs, and I do agree with you, but I would expand on that. As an agnostic atheist with a science background, I reject all mysticism and all primitive superstitions of any kind, including people carrying crosses around like that's going to ward off some mythical evil and so forth.
Can I respond to that, Mark?
Absolutely.
I understand where you're going with this, but why does it bother you if somebody else is wearing a cross? Because they're not interfering with your life, right?
Actually, in many ways they are. Because
How?
They vote with bad policies and bad
But that's their right. But that's their right to vote any way they want to.
Mark,
and because they do, it harms people. They actually go against their own precepts of their religion to the extent that their religion is harming people.
Okay, but here's the problem, Mark, with what you're saying. Okay, again, I understand where you're coming from. There's a lot of idiots out there. I've always said that there should be an IQ test to vote. I've always said that. But with that being said, they have the right to vote like idiots because it's their freedom. It's their right. You know, people died to give us the freedom, whoever we are, whether we wear a cross and we vote badly or in your opinion, and that's your opinion, and you're entitled to that, Mark. But that's just...
Let me add something to that, okay? May I?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. What I was going to say is the problem arises, and I'm not saying that they can't vote, but the problem arises that their ignorance ends up promulgating bad policy that harms people. So to that respect, all religions are a bad idea. We need rational thinkers.
I'm not a huge... I'm not... Mark, you're not... Believe it or not, I'm not a huge fan of religion either. Again, I get where you're coming from, but where we disagree is people have the right to have whatever religion they want. People have the right to vote whichever they want to. They could vote for someone because they like Donald Trump's hair. You could vote for someone because you think they're attractive or not attractive. That's the way our country works. You have the right to vote whichever way we want to. So with all due respect, I kind of disagree with you a little bit. There are a lot of dumb people out there. You know, whether they wear a cross or not is academic. 257-5396. Chuck, you're next. What's going on?
Yeah, do you think if Kathy Zhu was a Democrat and a supporter of the squad, she'd be in this situation?
You're saying if she was a supporter of the... It depends what she said on Twitter, though. Listen, I told you I disagree with this.
She just repeated facts.
Well, I disagree with it. I mean, you know my opinion on this, Chuck. I am for her
And how come the squad didn't come to her aid? She's a person of color, right?
Well, that's what I just said.
A yellow person, I guess. Is that what they?
Well, that's kind of a racist thing to say, Chuck. I'm not sure I would say that.
What is she? She's a person of color, right?
She's from China. You could say that.
You could. I think the correct term is Mongoloid.
I mean, Chuck. I mean, can we just be? I mean, you started off.
She's Asian American.
Okay, first of all, Chuck, I appreciate the call, but I'm not going to keep you on the line when you call someone of Chinese descent yellow. I think that's a racist remark. With that being said, I do agree with part of what you said. Not the way you the terminology, but I do agree. Yes, I think Democrats should come forward. I think the Democrats should come forward and say, listen, this woman Jew, I don't believe she said anything racist. Yes, I do think the members of the squad should do that. I would have more respect for them if they did that because I think that would be the right thing to do. Just because she wears a MAGA hat and just because she's a Republican and just because she thinks people should talk about black-on-black crime a little bit more and just because she doesn't like the fact that somebody had her want to try on a hijab and she got frustrated with that, she shouldn't have been dethroned of her crown. I agree. I think more Democrats should come forward and say, hey, guys, this is wrong. It's getting a little bit out of control. It's one thing to say something racist, but it's another thing when somebody just speaks their mind and speaks their opinion and they lose a job, or in this case, you're not Miss Michigan anymore. I think that's wrong. So, yes, I do agree with what you're saying, but you might want to work on your terminology a little bit there. That would be my advice to you. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to take more of your calls. We got Neil, we got Lawrence, got a few callers on the line. We will get to your calls when we come back. We will continue this conversation on the other side. Also, some great news for 9/11 responders. That and much more coming up next. You're listening to The Vegas Take.